Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe and support me. The wind howled through the ancient trees, carrying with it a scent of smoke and ash. Gandalf sat alone near the edge of a cliff, his eyes fixed on the vast expanse of Middle-earth below him. From this vantage point, he could see the rolling hills of the Shire in the far distance, and further still, the towering peaks of the misty mountains. But his mind was not on the beauty of the world. Dark thoughts clouded his mind, thoughts of power, temptation, and the shadow of an evil that had once again begun to stir. For weeks now, whispers had reached him of an ancient artifact long thought lost to time, the mithril crown. Fashioned in an age before the rings of power, it was said to grant dominion over all the lands of Middle-earth to whoever wore it. It had been hidden for millennia, buried deep beneath the earth to prevent it from falling into the wrong hands. But now, rumors claimed that the crown had resurfaced. More troubling still, these same rumors spoke of the awakening of an ancient Dark Lord, Mortagor, who sought the crown to reclaim his dominion over the world. Gandalf sighed, gripping his staff tightly. The council had been clear he was to find the crown before Mortagor could claim it. But the road ahead would not be easy. Mortagor's influence had already begun to spread, and dark creatures once again roamed the land. Time was running short. Gandalf rose to his feet, his decision made. He would go at once to Rivendell, to seek counsel from Elrond and Galadriel. They would know where to begin the search. The wind howled again, and Gandalf's cloak billowed behind him as he turned toward the path. Elrond's face was grim as Gandalf stood before him in the grand hall of Rivendell. The Elf Lord had listened to Gandalf's account in silence, but his eyes told of a deep concern that matched Gandalf's own. The mithril crown was thought lost forever, Elrond said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. If it has resurfaced, then the danger is greater than any we have faced since Sauron's defeat. Mortagor Brokenbar, he was powerful, even before the crown was made. With it, he could enslave all of Middle-earth. I fear he is already moving, Gandalf replied. The dark creatures are stirring. We have little time. Elrond nodded and motioned to a large, ancient map spread out on the table before them. There is a place, he said, pointing to a remote region of Middle-earth, far beyond the borders of Gondor and Rohan, the Iron Citadel. It was there, in the depths of that fortress, that the crown was last seen. But the citadel has been abandoned for centuries. It is a cursed place, filled with dark magic. Few who enter its halls ever return. Gandalf studied the map, his mind already working through the possibilities. The journey would be perilous, but there was no other way. He had to reach the crown before Mortagor did. I will need companions for this journey, Gandalf said. Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, they will come if I call. Choose your companions wisely, Gandalf, Elrond said gravely. This is not a quest for the faint of heart. In the days that followed, Gandalf sent word to his old friends. As he expected, Aragorn, now king of Gondor, was the first to answer his call. They met in the halls of Minas Tirith, where the stone walls echoed with memories of the great battles they had fought side by side. You never bring good news when you visit, Gandalf, Aragorn said with a wry smile as they embraced. What trouble have you brought this time? Gandalf's expression darkened as he explained the situation. Aragorn's smile faded, replaced by a look of steely determination. If Mortagor is truly stirring, we must act quickly, Aragorn said. I will gather my forces. We won't have the time for a full army, Gandalf replied. A smaller group will move faster and attract less attention. We need to get to the crown before Mortagor even knows we're coming. Aragorn nodded. Legolas and Gimli will join us. I will send for them at once. By the time they reached the borders of Rohan, Legolas and Gimli had joined their company. The elf and the dwarf greeted Gandalf warmly, though Gimli's grumbling about having to leave his forges in Erebor was loud enough to echo through the hills. Despite his complaints, there was a fire in the dwarf's eye as he was eager for another adventure. I've had enough of peace and quiet, Gimli muttered as they rode. "Too much time with the hammer and anvil makes a dwarf restless. I'm ready to swing my axe again." Legolas laughed lightly. "You're always looking for a fight, Gimli. Perhaps we will find something more than you bargained for on this journey." As they traveled deeper into Middle-earth, they were joined by others and new faces with their own reasons for seeking out the dangers of the road. Eolandi, a young sorceress from the east, was among them. She had heard whispers of the crown and sought to prove herself by helping Gandalf in his quest. Thalion, a ranger who appeared seemingly out of nowhere, was another. Though Gandalf did not fully trust him, Thalion's skill with a blade and his knowledge of the land would be invaluable. The journey took them across vast plains and through dense forests, but it was not until they reached the Black Fens that the true danger became apparent. The fens were a treacherous swamp, filled with dark magic and remnants of battles long forgotten. The air was thick with mist, and the ground beneath their feet seemed to shift and sink with every step. "We should turn back," Gimli grumbled as his boots sank into the mud. No dwarf was meant to travel through this cursed land. But Gandalf pressed forward, his staff glowing faintly in the gloom. "We must keep moving," he said. "Mortagor's agents are not far behind. If we hesitate, we will lose our chance." As they made their way deeper into the swamp, the shadows around them seemed to move, taking on shapes that made their hearts race. Dark creatures, a wraiths of a long-dead army, arose from the muck, their hollow eyes glowing with malice. Gandalf raised his staff, summoning a brilliant light that sent the creatures retreating into the shadows. But their numbers were growing, and the group was soon surrounded. "Hold your ground!" Aragorn shouted, drawing his sword. Legolas loosed arrow after arrow, each one striking its mark with deadly precision. Gimli charged forward with his axe, cutting down the wraiths as they came too close. Eolandi, her face pale but determined, summoned her own magic, sending tendrils of flame snaking through the swamp to burn the wraiths where they stood. Thalion fought silently beside her, his movements swift and efficient, as if he had done this 1,000 times before. Despite their efforts, the wraiths kept coming. For every one they felled, 2 more rose to take its place. Gandalf's light began to flicker, his strength waning. He knew they could not hold out much longer. Just as the wraiths closed in, a deafening roar shook the swamp. A massive creature, its body formed from the very earth itself, rose from the muck. It towered over them, its eyes burning with ancient magic. Mortagor's power had reached them at last. Gandalf raised his staff once more, summoning every ounce of his strength. The light blazed brighter than the sun, driving the creature back with a scream that echoed through the swamp. The wraiths dissolved into the mist, and the swamp was silent once more. But the victory had come at a cost. Gandalf staggered, his face pale, and Aragorn rushed to his side. "You've overextended yourself," Aragorn said, his voice filled with concern. "We need to rest." Gandalf shook his head. "There is no time. Mortagor knows we're coming now. We must reach the Iron Citadel before he does." With heavy hearts, they pressed on, the weight of their journey growing heavier with each passing day. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they stood before the Iron Citadel. The fortress was vast, its blackened walls stretching high into the sky. It loomed over them like a specter, its gates twisted and broken, as if some great force had once torn them apart. The air was thick with the stench of old magic, and the ground beneath their feet trembled as they approached. "This is it," Gandalf said softly. "The crown is inside." But they were not alone. As they stepped through the gates, shadows shifted in the darkness. Mortagor's agents had already arrived, and Mortagor himself was not far behind. The final battle was about to begin. The air in the Iron Citadel was thick with foreboding, every breath tasted of ancient dust and forgotten secrets. Gandalf and his companions moved in silence, the weight of the battle to come hanging over them. Each step echoed off the crumbling walls, as if the very stone of the fortress was warning them to turn back. But there was no turning back now. They had come too far. The corridors twisted and turned, leading them deeper into the heart of the citadel. Strange markings, glowing faintly with a dark, unnatural light, line the walls. Mortagor's magic was growing stronger. Gandalf could feel it in his bones, an icy chill that crept into his mind, whispering of doom. He gripped his staff tighter, focusing his thoughts. He would not let the darkness take him. They came to a vast chamber, the ceiling so high it disappeared into shadow. At the center of the room, raised upon a stone pedestal, was the mithril crown. It gleamed with an otherworldly light, the metal so pure it seemed to glow from within. For a moment, no one moved, all eyes locked on the crown. The air buzzed with its power, like the quiet hum of a storm about to break. "There it is," Gimli muttered under his breath, his voice a mixture of awe and fear. The cursed crown. Before anyone could respond, the temperature in the chamber dropped. A figure emerged from the shadows at the far end of the room, his presence filling the space with a suffocating darkness. Mortagor. He was tall, taller than any man, his form shrouded in a cloak of swirling black mist. His eyes burned like embers, filled with ancient malice and the promise of destruction. His voice, when he spoke, was a low growl that seemed to echo from the very depths of the earth. "You have come far, Gandalf," Mortagor said, his tone mocking. "But you are too late." "The crown is mine." Gandalf stepped forward, planting his staff firmly on the ground. "The crown will never belong to you, Mortagor. Your time has passed. You will not rule Middle-earth." Mortagor laughed, a sound that sent a chill through everyone in the room. "You speak as if you have a choice, wizard. But you know as well as I do that the power of the crown cannot be resisted. It calls to you, does it not? Even now, you feel its pull." Gandalf's jaw tightened. He did feel it at the whisper of the crown's power, tempting him with promises of control, of the ability to shape the world as he saw fit. But he had faced such temptations before. He would not be swayed. "We must destroy it," Aragorn said, stepping beside Gandalf, his hand on the hilt of his sword. Mortagor's eyes flicked toward the King of Gondor, a sneer curling his lips. "Fool! You think you can destroy what was never meant to be destroyed? The crown is eternal. It will outlast you, outlast all of us." Without warning, Mortagor raised his hand, and a blast of dark energy shot toward them. Gandalf raised his staff just in time, casting a barrier of light that absorbed the attack. But the force of it sent him staggering back, and Mortagor pressed forward, unleashing another wave of magic. The battle began in earnest. Aragorn drew his sword and charged at Mortagor, his blade gleaming with the light of and a tilde superscript Auril. Legolas loosed a flurry of arrows, each one aimed with deadly precision, but Mortagor seemed to move through the shadows themselves, evading every attack. Gimli roared and swung his axe, aiming for Mortagor's legs, but his blow was met with a blast of energy that sent him sprawling across the floor. Eowlandi, her face pale but determined, summoned her magic, hurling bolts of fire toward Mortagor. The flames licked at his cloak, but they were absorbed into the darkness surrounding him, snuffed out as if they had never been. Thalion, his face grim, circled around Mortagor, searching for an opening, but the Dark Lord seemed untouchable. Gandalf gritted his teeth and raised his staff once more. The chamber filled with a blinding light as he summoned every ounce of his strength. Mortagor let out a snarl of rage as the light pushed him back, but he fought against it, his dark magic crashing against Gandalf's barrier. The two forces clashed in the center of the room, light against darkness, neither giving way. The ground beneath them shook, the walls of the citadel groaning under the strain of the power unleashed within. Stones began to fall from the ceiling, crashing to the ground as the fortress started to collapse around them. "We can't hold him off forever," Legolas shouted over the din of battle, loosing another arrow that disappeared into the shadows. Gandalf knew he was right. Mortagor's power was too great, and the citadel was falling apart. If they didn't act soon, they would all be buried beneath the rubble. But the crown of the crown still sat upon its pedestal, untouched, gleaming with that terrible, tempting light. In a sudden, desperate move, Mortagor lunged toward the crown, his hand outstretched. Gandalf saw it happening as if in slow motion. He couldn't let Mortagor take it. With a cry of defiance, He hurled himself forward, his staff blazing with light. But even as he moved, a terrible thought pierced his mind. Could he stop Mortagor? Could he resist the crown himself? Mortagor's fingers brushed the edge of the crown, and for a moment, it seemed as if all was lost. But then, Aolandi, summoning the last of her strength, unleashed a torrent of magic that slammed into Mortagor's side, throwing him off balance. He let out a roar of fury as he stumbled, the crown slipping from his grasp. Gandalf seized his chance. With a mighty swing of his staff, he struck the crown, knocking it from its pedestal. It flew across the room, landing at the edge of the chamber, teetering on the brink of a deep chasm that had opened in the floor. Mortagor screamed, his voice filled with rage and desperation. No, the crown is mine. But it was too late. With one final, earth-shattering crack, the ground beneath the crown gave way, and it tumbled into the abyss, disappearing into the darkness below. Mortagor let out a howl of pure fury, his body writhing as the power of the crown slipped away from him. His form began to disintegrate, the shadows unraveling, his essence scattered like ash on the wind. In a final, desperate lunge, he reached for Gandalf, but his fingers passed through empty air as his body crumbled into nothingness. The chamber was silent. For a moment, no one moved. The battle was over, Mortagor was gone. The mithril crown was lost, buried deep in the earth, never to be found again. But at what cost? Gandalf stood in the center of the room, breathing heavily, his staff trembling in his hand. The light that had once shone from it was now dim, flickering like the last embers of a dying fire. Aragorn stepped forward, placing a hand on the wizard's shoulder. "It's over," Aragorn said quietly. Gandalf nodded, though his heart was heavy. The danger was gone, but the temptation of the crown lingered in his mind. He had come so close to claiming it himself. Even now, he could feel its pull, deep within the earth, calling to him. But he would resist. He had to. Together, the companions made their way out of the Iron Citadel. The fortress was crumbling behind them, the walls collapsing as they fled. But they had survived. They had won. As they emerged into the light of day, the sun was just beginning to rise, casting a golden glow over the land. The dark shadow of Mortagor was gone, and Middle-earth was safe once more. But Gandalf knew that the world would never be free from the temptation of power. The mithril crown was gone, but there would always be those who sought it, those who believed that they could control it. He only hoped that when the time came, someone would be strong enough to resist.